Okay, so I've brought a special guest to today's sermon. This is my Bible, which I have had since Christmas of 2003. And I know this because my grandma, who gave this to me, wrote a note at the beginning with the date in it. And yeah, my grandma passed away last month at the age of 94. And the memorial was a really special opportunity for several of us to express the appreciation that we had for her in her life. And one theme that came up over and over was her faith and how intentional she was about passing that faith on to us. Right? And so one way she did that was by gifting me this Bible back in 2003. Right? And at the bottom of this page, she wrote this in her note. This book will keep you from sin, or sin will keep you from this book. Yeah. And this particular Bible has been a significant part of my spiritual journey over the past 22 and a half years. It's a study Bible with notes at the bottom of each page that have taught me a lot. If you look inside, you'll see a lot of highlighted sections all over the place. However, it's also become very fragile, which I'll demonstrate now. Right? So what does all this have to do with Psalm 23? Well, two things. So one, this psalm was spoken over my grandma's funeral as a way to signify that after a lifetime of following Jesus, she has been and will be resting in Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And the second thing, again, has to do with this Bible. A very good habit that God led me to about 15 years ago was reading the Bible every day, right? And my very first Bible reading plan was found at the back of this Bible. And since then, God has been using this habit as a way to show me who He is, what He has done, and what He continues to do. And I've had a variety of reading plans over the years, but something interesting happened about a year ago. Right? I started reading Psalm 23, and I just ended up staying there. Right? That's still the passage I read each day. Okay, I'm gonna put this down now. Right? And why is that? Well, to be honest, I've been in a season of needing rest, and what I've needed rest from is the pressure that I put on myself that became burdensome over time. Right? And it's been a season of reducing unnecessary pressure and focusing my attention where God wants it focused. So, for example, my Bible reading plan for the last while has been reading Psalm 23. And now I have this opportunity to preach to you today. And as I prayed about what I should preach on, what came up was Psalm 23. And particularly what came up was Psalm 23 and how it can help others who are also in a season of needing rest. So let's start with the psalm, and then I'll get into the plan for today. So Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So here's the plan for today. The bulk of our time will be spent interpreting the psalm. I'll aim to flesh out the shepherding imagery so we can more fully appreciate the psalm as it was originally intended. And I'll tell you right now, there is a treasure chest of lessons we can learn from this passage. And really, the only problem is there's too many. That's right. In the abundance of riches that is Psalm 23, the main problem I encountered in my preparation was, how are people going to remember everything Psalm 23 has to offer? So I'm going to do it both ways today. We will be creating a list of lessons that will offer specificity in what we learn from the text. And then at the end, I'll reveal the main lesson we learn from Psalm 23. Feel free to guess what that main lesson is as we go along. All right, let's start interpreting Psalm 23. Before I get into the psalm itself, I want to just take a minute to talk about the superscript at the top of the psalm, a psalm of David. I've said more about superscripts in a previous sermon on Psalm 13, but I'll give the short version here. Superscripts are not a recent addition to the Bible. They've been around for thousands of years, and it's a huge piece of evidence suggesting David wrote the psalm. So if any of you aren't familiar with David, I would suggest 1st and 2nd Samuel to get his full story. But the short version is he was a shepherd boy who became king of Israel, and despite making mistakes along the way, was faithful to God throughout his life. Okay, so let's start by focusing in on the first verse of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. It's a powerful image that has stuck with us for thousands of years. However, it can also feel a bit abstract for those of us who live in the city. I personally have no shepherding experience. Fortunately, there are shepherds who have shared their perspective on Psalm 23. So I'll be drawing on those perspectives to flesh out this perspective of the Lord as our shepherd. And if any of you out there are shepherds, you're welcome to let me know how I did. So to start with, a shepherd has sheep, and if the Lord is our shepherd, then we are like sheep. Right? I'll describe a few characteristics of sheep, and you can see if you relate to any of those. So first up, they really are a bunch of conformists, and they frequently get scared. They routinely make bad decisions. They can be stubborn. Are you relating to any of these yet? And they're highly dependent on the shepherd, right? And it's that last point, being highly dependent on the shepherd, that will be most relevant to Psalm 23. The Lord is our shepherd, and we are highly dependent on him. All right, I'm getting this list started. First up, like sheep, we are highly dependent on the shepherd. List looks pretty manageable so far, right? Good. We'll keep going. Let's read the rest of verse 1. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. What does that mean? I shall not want. All right, other Bible versions say I lack nothing, which helps convey the meaning. Right? And so when sheep have a shepherd, life becomes simple for them. They don't have to figure out where they'll go, what they'll eat, or how to stay out of danger. The shepherd figures all that out. All the sheep have to do is follow the shepherd. And maybe some days there'll be more food, and other days will be harder. But the sheep lack nothing. They shall not want. The shepherd provides what they need day by day, moment by moment. We have a similar mentality with our shepherd. So we learned that, like sheep, we can learn the shepherd will provide. That mentality of I shall not want is available to us too. On to verse 2. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And actually, I'm going to split this up even more. So let's talk first about that phrase, he makes me lie down. So there are two ways to make a sheep lie down. And so for this first one, I will temporarily move this stand to the side because it will a little bit more of a visual. So one is to use the turn method. Right? I looked up some YouTube videos on how to do this, and I shall now impart this knowledge onto you. So for this physical demonstration, pretend there is a sheep here with its head here and its tail here. And so the first step is you get one hand under the chin and another hand under the tail, and then you turn the head to the side to throw the sheep off balance. And then right when you've got the sheep where you want it, you pick up the leg and slide it down. And then from there, you can You can maneuver the sheep where you want it, but as soon as you let go, it'll run away. So that's one way of making a sheep lie down. Sheep do not like being made to lie down that way, but shepherds will make sheep lie down that way if they need to for the sheep's well-being, right? And similarly, the Lord is our shepherd and may make us lie down in a similar way for our well-being. But there's another, ultimately more effective way of making a sheep lie down. Right? If a sheep has enough food and enough safety, and it's not dealing with insects biting at it, and there isn't social tension among the sheep, then the sheep is happy to lie down. Right? And you can bet the shepherd played a pivotal role in making sure all these conditions were met. Likewise, you can bet God loves making us lie down in a similar way by providing what we need. So that's a lesson there. Right? The Lord provides rest, and we can choose to accept the Lord's provision of rest, or if you'd rather be stubborn, the Lord can make you lie down. Okay, let's talk about green pastures. So up until recently, this is what I pictured when reading that line about green pastures. What a picture of abundance. I would definitely lie down in that field. And this may have been what David had in mind when writing this psalm, this image of God's abundance. It's also possible he had something different in mind. Right? This is because this lush, picturesque green pasture is nowhere close to what David would have experienced as a shepherd. Here's a more realistic picture. Right? David would have been tending the sheep out of the Judean wilderness in a similar environment as this one. Right? And then you see those little patches of grass. Those are green pastures. Yeah, that's right. When the shepherds of that time talked about green pastures, this is what they had in mind. Right? And this revised image revises our interpretation a little bit. Right? These are conditions in which the sheep shall not want and are content enough to be made to lie down. These are challenging conditions, and the shepherd would have to work each day to find enough green pastures to sustain the sheep. And this affects our perception of God as the shepherd too. There are times in our life where God provides abundantly, such as in the previous photo. But there are other times where God's provision looks more like this. It's enough to get us through the day, but then the next day, God will find another way of providing for us. And as a sheep, we learn to depend on God's ability to provide each day, even though we don't see the abundance ahead of time. So the lesson here is that while God does provide feasts for us sometimes, his provision often looks more like day-to-day green pastures. All right, so now for the rest of verse 2. He leads me beside still waters. So remember earlier when I said sheep get scared by loud noises? Well, this applies here. So you see this beautiful river here. It looks pretty good, right? Nope. Too loud, sheep could slip and fall into the water. No good. That's better. Still waters, right? Or how about this? The morning dew on the grass as the sheep eat their breakfast. Maybe that's what David meant by still waters. Right? In any case, the shepherd knows exactly what kind of still waters the sheep need and how to get them there. That's the lesson here. The Lord knows exactly what we need and provides it. Oh wow, that list is starting to look pretty full. I'll keep going, but remember there will be a main lesson at the end if it gets hard to remember all these. Let's continue on to the beginning of verse 3. He restores my soul. How does this relate to shepherding? Well, a lot can happen to sheep out in the wilderness. They could get hurt. They could get separated from the flock. Right? And once those types of things start to happen, the sheep's life is in danger. But guess what? The shepherd won't let that sheep die. The shepherd will find the sheep, mend its wounds, make sure the flock does not leave the sheep behind. The shepherd restores the sheep's life. Similarly, God restores our souls. This could be from physical danger, as many Christians throughout history can attest to. Or maybe your soul needs a different kind of restoration. Right? Maybe you become profoundly discouraged by the struggles you continue to face. Maybe it's become hard to go on by yourself. You need help. You need God. You need God to restore your soul. And most likely, that restoration will come one day at a time as you learn to look to Him for day-to-day provision. Look to Him now. What is God providing for you today? I'll move on, but the lesson here is the Lord provides restoration of our souls. Now for the second half of verse 3. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Here's a picture to help illustrate the point. You can see the sheep all following the shepherd as he leads them along the path. And what do you notice in this picture? Well, one thing I notice is how hilly the terrain is. Right? How is the shepherd going to get the sheep up and down those hills? Right? Will he take them straight up and straight down? I don't think so. All right, I think what he will do is find a path around the hill that takes them up and down the hill. And it's not as fast as going straight up the hill, but it is safer. And the Lord often provides a similar type of direction for us. Right? Our human hearts often strive to get to the mountaintop as fast as possible. But God knows better. Right? God knows when to pull us off a dangerous path, such as when we're caught in a pattern of sin. Right? Or there may be times where God closes the door on an opportunity that seems very aligned with God's purposes, but ultimately doesn't fit God's timing for us. Or the opposite may be true, where God pulls us into an opportunity we may not feel ready for, but God knows we are. Right? And each of these situations can be difficult, but we can have confidence that God leads us capably. To state it simply, the Lord provides the direction for our path, where to go, and when. Ooh, that's even more full than before. We're only halfway through. Well, let's keep going. Verse 4 carries on with this idea of God giving us direction. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Shepherds have to take their sheep through valleys sometimes. These valleys can get them where they need to go, and it can also be a source of food and water. But these valleys are also filled with danger. There could be hidden predators, flooding, or areas where the sheep could slip and fall. Right? If these sheep want to make it through safely, they will need to follow the shepherd closely. And as they follow the shepherd, they don't need to fear. What about us? Do we fear when we enter dangerous territory? Do we lock our eyes onto God through our deepest periods of discouragement? We believe God can get us through these times. What about this? Valleys provide food, water, and a way to get to where the shepherd wants to take the sheep. Do we believe God can use the struggles we face as a way to provide what we need and get us where we need to go? This verse tells us the Lord provides a way through our struggles as well as purpose in those struggles. And that may be a hard lesson to take in at this time, and that's okay. But do keep turning to God and do keep letting Him work in your life. The second half of verse 4 tells us more about why the sheep do not need to fear. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I'll bring up a visual of the shepherd's rod and staff. The rod would have looked a bit like a baseball bat, shown on the left, though it would have had some differences. For example, a rod wouldn't have been green. But a rod would function similarly to a bat where it was used to hit things, right? If a coyote's coming up to eat a sheep, whack. Not today, coyote, right? Or on the other hand, the rod could also be used on sheep to get them back on the path if they're going astray. But this would look much more like a gentle tap than a great big whack, right? And then the staff, shown on the right, was much longer and had a crook on the end, right? And this would be particularly effective for redirecting sheep who are getting off the path, right? The shepherd can just reach out, grab the sheep by the neck of the leg, and then pull them back, right? And the sheep is unlikely to be happy to be pulled like this in the moment, but the shepherd will do what is needed to keep the sheep safe. And any Christian here who has gone astray knows that God can be this way with us too, right? God is not against us as he is against the forces of evil in this world, but as God is for us, he will pull us back toward him if he needs to, right? And we may not like how he does that in the moment, as it may lead to painful consequences. But if those consequences get us back to him, then that's much better than letting us go astray. So the lesson is this: the Lord provides justice against the forces of evil in this world, even if it doesn't always look like that. And the Lord provides correction for us when we need it, which can feel painful, but his aim is to bring us back to him. And he knows exactly how gentle or forceful to be in that process. And yes, I know this list is getting even longer. Hang in there as we go through the remaining 2 verses. And again, see if you can guess my main point today before I reveal it at the end. Get into verse 5. See that? But it says, you prepare a table before me. Imagine a picture of a feast and a table and food at this feast. There's chairs and it's out in the woods, right? And so it seems that the picture shifts at this point, taking us to a feast hosted by a king, right? And David went from a shepherd to a king himself, right? So the shift in imagery would line up with his own life experience. As he hosted guests, he would prepare a feast for them and would honor those guests, right? And if these guests had enemies, the host would make sure the guests were safe in his home. Not only that, but how would these enemies feel as they see these guests dining with the king? The guests are honored, and the enemies are dishonored. And so likewise, God as our king hosts us and honors us before our enemies with a lavish feast. However, there is also another interpretation that's offered out there for this verse. And it's one that continues the shepherding image. All right, so now picture a mountaintop with grass and a blue sky. All right, so it's a mountainous landscape with blue skies and clouds and green on the top of the mountaintop. All right, and in this interpretation, the shepherd takes the sheep to a table, which is basically a feast of grass on the mountaintop, right? And as you might imagine, though, it's no simple matter for the shepherd to bring the sheep there, right? He must go on ahead to prepare the land by clearing it of poisonous plants, checking for water sources, and making sure there aren't any predators ready to attack. All right? And in the same way, the king's table must be prepared before the guests arrive. The shepherd's table must be prepared before the sheep arrive. Now, I can't definitively say which interpretation is correct. I also think it's quite possible the poetry is written in such a way that both interpretations are meant simultaneously. But in any case, the lesson is the same. The Lord provides abundantly for us and protects us fiercely. I'll continue. So in verse 5, it says, "You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." King's feast, shepherd's table. Lesson from that part of the verse. And the later half of verse 5, "You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." And again, there are two ways you can visualize this image, right? One is at the king's table, where the guests are honored by having expensive oil poured on their head to physically show how much the king values them, right? Furthermore, the guest's cup overflows due to the abundance of the drinks provided to them, right? Or an alternate image you can come up with here is the shepherd pouring oil on a sheep's head to heal wounds, get rid of insects, treat infections, right? And the Lord our shepherd will use abundant oil, an overflowing amount, to heal those wounds. All right, and again, the lesson is the same with either image. The Lord provides healing for us and honors us, right? And I'll just note as well that healing and honor often do go together, right? And this is because sickness and shame often go together, right? If you're living with a chronic condition, such as something that involves chronic pain, chronic fatigue, a mental health condition, right? This can often come with a perception from others and from yourself that this condition makes you weak, right? And that's shame talking to you, right? And God doesn't want you living with that shame, right? And I don't know when or even if God will heal you in this lifetime, but I do know God wants your shame gone, right? And if you are in Christ, know that you are a cherished child of God, our Father and our King. And if you are having trouble accepting that truth, you may want to pray with some fellow Christians about that matter. One more verse. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." This is in some ways a natural conclusion to the 5 verses that came before it. The Lord as our shepherd provides for us thoroughly, and following him is our main task. Goodness comes from following the shepherd. Mercy comes from following the shepherd. And this is surely to be the case for all the days of our lives. One thing I'll point out, though, is that this verse says goodness and mercy follow us rather than us following it, right? And the way this word is used is not a passive following from behind. This is an active pursuit. Goodness and mercy will doggedly pursue us all the days of our lives because we belong to the shepherd, and the shepherd will not let us go astray. I will say it again. The Lord provides a lasting goodness and mercy that will never, ever let us go. It's not about how good we are at following him. It's about how good he is and how he holds on to us. Right? And so finally, we have the end of the psalm. "And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." It is tough living in this world. Not only do we live with the evils of sin, but we live with constant stress, loneliness, shame, institutions that intentionally or unintentionally fail us, bodies that are designed to eventually fail us, and whatever else I missed. Right? It is a profoundly important aspect of Christianity that this life on earth is not all there is. I suspect this ending to the psalm is a reason why Psalm 23 is so popular at Christian funerals. Right? My grandma had lived her life following the shepherd, and now she will be with him forever in heaven with a restored body and a renewed mind. In other words, the Lord provides so much more than earth can contain. Thank God. So here is the full list. I know it's a lot, but now's the part where you guess the main point I want to get across. And before you guess, I'll read out the full list, and that will hopefully give you a hint. All right, here we go. Like sheep, we depend on the shepherd. Like sheep, we can learn the Lord provides. The Lord provides rest, sometimes despite our objections. The Lord provides day-to-day provision, and sometimes a feast. The Lord provides exactly what we need. The Lord provides a restoration of our souls. The Lord provides direction. The Lord provides a way through our struggles as well as purpose in them. The Lord provides justice and correction. The Lord provides and protects. The Lord provides healing and honor. The Lord provides lasting goodness and mercy that won't let go. The Lord provides so much more than earth can contain. All right, I'll open it up. Who has a guess as to what today's main point? All right, we got the Lord provides. That is the correct answer. The Lord provides. The Lord provides. The Lord provides. I hope you will all remember this, right? And I hope as you remember this, Psalm 23 will deeply impact you. Right? You will find rest in the Lord. The struggles of this life won't need to cause fear because the Lord provides. Right? And I said in the beginning that I've been in a season of needing rest. Right? And I don't really know to what extent that season will ever truly end. Right? But that's okay. Right? I don't need to leave the season of needing God's provision. Sure, God has more work he wants to be involved in, but that doesn't mean he wants us to not rest in him. Right? And this is what it is to be a Christian, to depend on Christ to save us rather than save ourselves. Maybe you're not a Christian today, but you see that what this world offers is not enough. Maybe you find yourself pulled toward this idea of Christ as our shepherd who provides for us. Right? Or maybe you are a Christian, but you're seeing now more than ever how much you need Jesus. If that's you, perhaps the next step is to talk to someone about that. Or maybe it's to pray about it. Talk directly to Jesus about it. Right? For now, I will pray for us, and the worship team is welcome to come on up at this time as I close. Jesus, you describe yourself as the Good Shepherd because we are like your sheep who desperately need you. You tell us over and over again how you provide for us. Help us to believe you. Bring us back onto the path if you need to. Lead us to green pastures. Make us lie down. Restore our souls.